Yo, what's up, guys? Somebody that was always very supportive of me here on the radio in Columbus, and a really close personal friend of mine, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only attorney at law, Steve Palmer. This is actually your place.
Yeah, can you imagine that? I have a law building in Columbus, Ohio, and instead of like using it for law space, I built a studio in the basement.
And so you've been doing a podcast of your own.
I have been doing a podcast of my own. We call it Lawyer Talk, and then there's some other stuff we do down here, but it's all because of the Blitz, of my days on the Blitz.
Yeah, man, that was so fun. People used to call in, if you don't know, on Wednesdays, and Steve would advise them best you can on the radio. You give them some general advice about whatever predicament they might be in, whether it's some kind of like social issue or criminal issue or whatever, DUI. People, you've helped thousands of people across Central Ohio, and that was one of the segments that people would always stop me and go, "Hey, man, thanks a lot for doing that."
Yeah,
because a lot of people are scared to call a lawyer.
I learned so much doing that. I mean, look, I never called it legal advice. I called it like helping people with I would discuss legal topics. They would give me what's going on, but I learned through that process just from feedback is that so many people are afraid to pick up the phone and call an attorney. I think they just don't know if they're going to get billed. They don't know like what the process would be. So I would always ask myself, like, why would you be comfortable calling into the radio and asking legal questions? And I think that's why. And part of that was the way you guys ran your show. It was so disarming. It wasn't like you were getting judged or there was any you didn't have any opinions about it.
Yeah, people could have anonymity if they wanted,
Yeah, and the names were protected to save or the names were kept quiet to protect the innocent for sure.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I mean, like so many people are helped, and I mean, I can even relate to that. Like you get a traffic ticket or something like that, and you think you're in the right and you can fight it, but a lot of times people are like, man, like life is so busy. Like, do I have time to call a lawyer? Like,
or like, how do you do it? Like, who do you call or what is it all about? And, even to this day, I'll be checking out at Kroger or something and people ask me,
they're like, but
do I know you? Yeah. Do I know you? And I'm like, I don't think so, man. And they're like, but you just look so, you sound, were you the guy on the Blitz that was doing that?
Funny.
And that just shows how much reach you guys had and how or the impact of that show.
So what was it like the day that you decided you're like, I'm gonna go to law school? That's just what I want to do.
It was that was back in the 90s, and I graduated college in 92. And anybody in my age group, here's what the contest was back in those days. We would pin the rejection letters on the door of our dorms.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, the job market was. Yeah, no, this is in college. Like the job market was so crappy.
Gotcha.
And I had a history degree, and I always sort of philosophically, even my history degree was focused on legal history, and so I sort of bent that way. But I went to law school because I didn't have anything else to do. That's really what it came down to.
And how did you choose criminal defense?
It's interesting because I used to say I was going to be a prosecutor, working for the government, prosecuting cases. But a lot of that was my first job. I had mentors doing a guy named Bill Meeks, who he's passed away now, but I showed up as a law clerk, second year in law school, working for him, and I just fell in love with criminal defense. I just, something about it, being the underdog or taking on helping people, I think a lot of it is. So you're the underdog, you get to help people, and I'm sort of ADHD, so everything's different all the time. There's so much going on.
It's got to be intense, like with a murder trial. I know you can't talk specifics about things, but I mean, like when you go in and you get the feeling like when you're talking to whoever the defendant is, your client, and you look in their eyes and you're like, man, I believe this guy. Like I know he didn't do it. And you go in there and you're able to like convince a jury and put on a performance, because it is very performance based.
It is like
being a lawyer, a defense lawyer, even.
Yeah, it's like some weird mix between like a Saturday Night Live skit where it's like totally live and somewhat scripted and not scripted, and maybe like a formal Broadway play. It's like somewhere in that mix is a jury trial. There's preparation, but you also have to be able to shift and move and pivot as things come up. But, everybody always asks, like, how do you represent the guilty guys and how can you possibly do that? And we can talk about that. I can find, I found my way to do that morally and be comfortable. But those are the easy ones. It's the innocent guys that are the hard ones. So if you've got somebody that you don't think did it, just think for a second the kind of pressure that puts on the attorney and even the system generally speaking. Because everybody else thinks that he did. Everybody else thinks you're sitting next to a guilty guy. And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't think he did this. and I don't need that pressure.
Yeah, right.
And those are the hard ones.
So how do you go and represent somebody that you
That
feel is guilty?
All the time. I've always said this: if I didn't represent people if I only represented innocent people, I'd have been broke a long time ago. The system prosecutes everybody, innocent and guilty people. And a lot of, you just have to redefine your job in a lot of ways. I mean, the government still has to prove it. The government still has to follow the rules. The government still has to bring a case. And even if the guy is factually guilty, they have to bring a case in the courtroom and do it. And, if somehow we didn't protect those guys because of the cause, and that cause being in one particular case that this guy is just so guilty that he doesn't deserve it, well, then those protections won't be there for you when you're wrongfully accused. It's like there's the old saying that sooner or later the devil will turn around on you too. You've got to protect the institution of the system, and my job is to do that. And look, the whole system is made up of humans. The person being prosecuted is human, the prosecutor is human, the judge is human, the defense lawyer is human, and the investigators are human. And if anybody thinks that those people can't get it wrong or make mistakes, or aren't willing to round the corners off a little bit sometimes to get to where they want to go, which is prosecute a guy they think is guilty, then you're naively giving the system too much credit.
Is it almost like it's not that they're guilty? You're just at times trying to find holes in the prosecution's case?
Yeah, so the prosecutor has to prove the case, and let's say that I think that this guy's factually guilty. They still have to prove it. In other words, they still have to bring in witnesses, bring in evidence, and prove the case. But even beyond that, not most cases, in fact, don't go into a courtroom for a full-blown trial. A lot of what I do is protect my client, albeit guilty, from too much. So it'd be really easy to just throw everybody in the slammer and throw away the key, lock them up and throw away the key. And maybe I'm providing a little bit of buffer between that attitude and reaching a just outcome. So if you got two forces pushing on it, the middle is usually where it ends up.
So 92 is when you graduated law school?
Graduated college in 92. Went to a small college called the College of Worcester up in sort of central or mid-Ohio.
So how crazy important was the OJ trial in your life?
It was awesome. That happened when I was in law school.
That was that was that time, right?
When I was in law school, I was watching it, working for criminal defense lawyers.
Because I remember I started radio in 94, and I remember going to the radio station for my first internship, getting off the couch, watching the OJ trial. I was interning at the radio station when the not guilty verdict came in. Yeah, all those memories. So I mean, I can't even imagine being in law school at the time. Yeah,
and it was before this mass social media presence and the shorts where people can just scroll. I mean, that was the entertainment. There were people taking weeks off work to watch that trial, or at work, people had their little TVs watching that stuff.
It was wall-to-wall coverage. It was crazy
for months. It seemed like, and I was working in the criminal defense realm, and I remember watching F. Lee Bailey stand up and cross-examine, I think Furman, and then in the trial, and then he was also responsible for doing some cross-examination in the suppression hearing before the trial, and I was blown away, man. I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. So those guys were just lethal killers, huh? Not OJ guys.
Yeah. No, talking about the lawyers. OJ was not guilty, as it turns out. But yeah, no, they were good. F. Lee Bailey. Look, that
was our first taste of a Kardashian too, right?
A Kardashian. He was just sort of he just sat there for the most of it.
Okay, so he wasn't a pivotal part in your.
Kardashian was, I think he was OJ's buddy, and was just there. So he brought the case to all these guys, and they assembled a dream team. And I mean, some of it I look back on, and I was like, strategically I would do it a little bit differently. Some of it I was blown away by it, but man, it just defined our generation, didn't it? In a lot of ways.
Johnny Cochran was a rock star. I mean, if it don't fit, you must have quit.
You must have quit.
I mean, that's once in a lifetime right there.
You just don't see trials like that very often.
That was the first one televised like that, if I can remember.
It was the first big one like that. Yeah. And then there was a few others that sort of came on the heels, but that blew it all away.
Totally.
I mean,
even to this
TV.
day, I mean, the Johnny Depp thing was big, but nothing like culturally like the OJ thing.
Nothing like the OJ. I mean, look, let's face it. Johnny Depp was interesting because it was Johnny Depp.
Right.
But it wasn't a brutal murder.
Oh, but his performance during that trial was outrageous. So good.
Genius, man.
Genius. I mean, the way he was able to stay cool. What do you think that is? When people go into court and they're just, you think it's his acting ability?
Yeah, he's an actor.
Yeah.
He's an actor. And it's not just that he wasn't just acting, but I think, what makes somebody an actor versus somebody becoming an actor. Like it's in him. Like he just has a personality and he knows how to use it. And
but he was able to play all the cross-examination.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in the courtroom, he was just able to play them.
Yeah, he would just deadpan it too.
Like there was a script. It really was. It was like it was a movie.
I would love to have him as a witness in a case. Like we try to teach our defendants.
Yeah.
Or we teach isn't the right word. We try to help our defendants testify like that.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to do. And you know what's interesting is that a lot of times we'll use acting coaches. There's acting coaches that I have used.
So that's allowed, huh?
To help my client prepare. Yeah.
Interesting.
And
well, because people have everyday people have to be really nervous.
They are totally freaked out.
Especially if you're like your freedom is on the line.
Yeah, well, and you probably feel it like when you like on the radio. It's like all of a sudden a microphone's in front of you, a camera's in front of you,
sure, yeah,
and people their personality changes,
right?
And the actors learn not to let their personality change, and then they learn, I think, even deeper to have a different personality. But what we just try to do is get our clients to strip them of that sort of stage fright intensity and just do what Depp did.
Yeah. See, like what I do is it's more of an extension of my personality. And that was when I was able to really excel in radio and performing, is when I learned that all I have to be is myself.
Yeah.
And, it's in certain circumstances, you might be a little more high strung version of yourself, a little, more outrageous version of yourself. Like Howard Stern is a perfect example of that. That's who Howard is. That's how he thinks, back in the day.
Yep.
But the character he might portray on the radio every day, or the Loper that everybody would listen to in the morning driving to work, may not be the same exact person, you go and sit next to at a bar or go to the movies with or something. Might just be a slightly toned up version of that.
Maybe a matter of degree.
Yeah.
But I noticed even the first day I walked in and you guys were starting your show, I noticed you put in preparation, you put in time, you had all that mapped out, but then it was you on the microphone. It was always just you on the microphone.
Authenticity is everything when it comes, I think, to this sort of communication. When you're doing a verbal communication like this, authenticity is everything. I think authenticity used to mean somebody brilliant like Paul Harvey.
Yeah.
And, the nation, their interests change, right? Like we saw, the rise of somebody like Johnny Carson, who was so good, who was so cool, just debonair and just able to like maneuver through Hollywood's absolute most elite and almost seem as famous as them without outshining them. You know what I'm saying? And then you saw somebody like David Letterman, who was a brilliant interviewer, a little more self-deprecating.
Yep.
And then somebody like Jay Leno, who I think for a lot of the audience, it made it less awkward than David Letterman made things, which that's what I really loved about David Letterman. But
he did, but that intentionally. So
And Jay was able to kind of bring it a little more mainstream and bring everybody in sort of, with that big Italian sort of New York personality.
Which makes sense, I guess, why they put him at the 11:30 spot instead of Letterman initially,
Yeah, I always thought it was terrible. So like I've in the last couple of years like really come around to be a Jay Leno fan for his show, for his career post The Tonight Show. Like I was not a Jay Leno fan.
I didn't watch it either.
Yeah, during the years of the Tonight
But I watched
Show.
Letterman.
Yeah, because to me it seemed kind of hokey. It was like like goofy morning radio, like the morning zoo. You know what I mean, like that. And that's the kind of stuff like I absolutely hate. So,
well, when did that change in radio? Because there was a time where all radio sounded just like what you just sounded, and then maybe Stern comes along and says, "I'm just going to be who I am."
That was the real start of it. So like those days they called them boss jocks.
Oh yeah,
those were boss jocks. It's so embarrassing. Yeah, and these guys like they were talking like this, and everybody talks like this. It's like a strip club DJ. Everybody, hey everybody, 5 minutes past 8 o'clock, 8:05. You know what I mean? Saying all this stuff like just filler. You know what I mean? All you're fucking doing is you're just doing filler. It's like so bizarre. But these guys, for a while, that they got a lot of big jobs. Guys like Scott Shannon, guys like Rick Dees, just huge in that boss jock era. And Stern came through and just was like, not today, motherfuckers. It was over. And like when he would just speak plainly, and obviously he came out with the more edgy style, with the girls and trying to get the women naked, which is the exact opposite of who he is today.
Right.
Now he's just a brilliant interviewer, but which everybody changes, but no one had ever heard anything like that. And on the opposite spectrum, somebody like Rush Limbaugh, took the medium. I had a buddy, Dave Michaels, rest in peace. who worked in Cape Girardeau starting out in Missouri with Rush Limbaugh. So Dave was the midday guy and Rush was the afternoon guy. So Dave did 10 to 2, Rush would do like 2 to 7, right? And he said, he would tell me, he's like, Loper, he's like, I saw the evolution of Rush Limbaugh. Like I saw him go from being a guy who just played records.
Yeah.
He
started off doing that.
Yeah. And then then would work in the political stuff, just a little bit at a time, just handcrafted it. And to the point where
almost the format that we're at right now.
Yeah. Well, to the point where it was more of a revenue getter for the radio station to take out all the music and just let him do his thing.
And it's pretty remarkable. I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but he sort of pioneered what we're doing. He pioneered like these long form discussions, and he didn't.
Absolutely. Yeah. He was one of the guys for sure. Yes.
Yeah. But what you're talking about, like being yourself or not being the boss jock or whatever, it's really not unlike what I do in a courtroom. When I give seminars or I try to help people learn how to try cases, and I'm like, there's always like what you say and then how you say it. And I think so many people get caught up in the how you say it part of it.
Yeah.
That they get tongue tied, and if they stutter or they stammer, I've probably done it dozens of times in this conversation, but I don't give a crap. Because we're talking here.
Right. Right.
And some of that came from me. I read Jerry Spence wrote a book called How to Argue or How to Win an Argument Every Time or something.
Uh-huh.
I read it back when I was in law school one summer, and that was the point he was making. And one thing he said that I still tell people about is he would read his closing arguments afterward because, there's a court reporter writing all that down. And when he read it, it sounded terrible. But in the courtroom, people say it was the most genius, brilliant closing argument that they've ever heard. And it's because how he said it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But what he was getting through, the ideas that he was sharing with people, that's what matters. You have to get the point across. What you're telling them is what matters. And then his overriding message that you've already brought up is he was just himself.
Yeah.
He would try to find that inner person, and he wins an argument every time by defining what the win is.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like invoking emotion.
Yeah, and
that's what you're trying to do.
Or your own weaknesses.
In the courtroom or on the radio.
Yeah, yeah. and sharing your own weaknesses is a huge a huge part of the art of advocacy, is to be able to share your weaknesses about my case, and then use it as your strength.
Yeah.
Probably, I know you're into martial arts. I use that as an example all the time.
Sure, yeah.
You take the weaknesses or use the other guy's force against him, and you sort of pivot on that. But a lot of the entertainment, acting, even musical performing, because I've done some of that, is very similar to what I do in a courtroom.
Yeah, so you play guitar, right?
I do. I play guitar, and for the last 10 or 12 years, I focused almost exclusively on classical guitar, but I still got the old.
So wait, when you say classical guitar, like what?
I'm talking what standing there playing Bach.
Oh, okay.
Or sitting there playing Bach, all finger style.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
And now, you have kids and I have a son, and I've sort of passed it off to him. So that's why I focus most of my energy on getting him. But I did see a Van Halen tapestry hanging on his wall in his bedroom.
I love that, dude.
Right.
That's so sick. Yeah, I mean, guitars, it's a really, it's such a valuable, I think, humbling thing to do in life because it's so difficult. Doing difficult things, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, it does. And, the more, in music generally, man, I think it just tickles a part of your soul that you don't get anywhere else. And
yeah, for sure.
I don't have the gift that like Eddie Van Halen would have, not just to play the guitar, but to just stream music. Like he's like this lightning rod to stream music.
Yeah,
and I've been around those guys, and they're remarkable. You were in Nashville, you probably saw. There's like those guys. Man. It's not just the performers, but like in the studio, the producer guys in the studio who just compose that music.
Well, living in Nashville, I was an 8-minute walk literally from my condo to Broadway. So I was on Broadway all the time, and for an entire year, and just going down. And I would go down, not to party or anything, but I would just go down to just to hear certain players, because you get to know the different bands. A lot of the bands are incestuous with the different honky tonks on Broadway. So they'll play Kid Rock's tonight, or they're playing, over at Hank Jr.'s place tomorrow night, or at Aldean's or wherever. And so you get to know who the people are, and where they are, and who you want to see. And so you specifically, it's really an amazing city, where you can go out and you can go, okay, I'm going down here for a little bit to Tootsie's. I'm going to go see so-and-so, and then I'll just come back and eat dinner and go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was dope. You know what I mean?
Awesome.
You don't have to go out and do the whole like Broadway, like, college night party. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you can, but you don't have to, like once you know the city a little bit. And I was fortunate enough to live down in that area, like to be literally on foot in that area all the time. Like Printer's Alley had some of the most brilliant musicians I've ever seen in my life. Like literally, like every night of the week, Monday, 6 p.m., you walk in and you're just like, who's this?
And you had the luxury, I guess, of being there daily. So it's not like people go down and visit. And I've done this. I go down and visit, and you have like a limited period of time to go do a couple of things.
Absolutely, yeah.
And maybe you catch a band, but you don't get the schedule to actually see and follow people.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this pizza place called the Mellow Mushroom there, and they did Metal Mondays. And I was always so impressed. This band, they would give you like a menu of like all different kinds of metal songs, from Slayer to Metallica, like really, deep tracks that are difficult to play. And so these guys would have like 60 songs you could choose from. And being a musician,
that's a huge
to be able to draw from 60 songs out of nowhere. I mean, there's like bands that headline Sonic Temple that can't do that.
It's amazing. If you're a bedroom musician or a basement musician like I am, and you want to be humbled, go to Nashville and watch some of those those at the oddest times. I was down there last spring at 4 p.m. We walked into one, I don't know if it was Aldine's or one of those places.
Yeah.
And there was this gal performing with a guy and a drummer, a trio.
Yeah.
And they were doing they were taking requests from the audience, just calling them out and nailing it. It's like these people are incredibly talented.
They really are. And I mean, the different honky tonks have different styles, obviously. But the biggest misconception is that Nashville's all country music. And there's such a rock presence there. There's so many bands that come from all over the world. Like Slash was there. I got to talk to him when he was there.
Really?
And he had just recorded there. I interviewed Bon Jovi when I was down there when they opened up their honky tonk, JBJ's, on Broadway. And they had just recorded their latest album there. And, I think Bon Jovi's recorded the better part of like his last 5 or 6 records in Nashville.
Is that sort of where they have that Studio Row, I guess? Is that sort of
where?
Yeah,
so where I worked at the radio station was on Music Row.
Music Row, that's what it's
so
called.
Like that's used to be a little more prevalent, like where, you would just see all day long like record reps and people going from the different buildings to different studios to make deals or, to go see these bands. And I mean, just a real just melting pot of creativity, and which later equals success for a lot of people. But it was cool to drive past buildings where you're like, dude, Elvis recorded there?
Yeah, isn't that remarkable?
It's fucking great. Like Elvis? And so being in Nashville was a really big deal for me. I mean, I love Columbus, but, and I love where I'm from in South Florida, but Nashville, the time that I spent there, it'll always be a home to me.
Yeah, I imagine. I love it down there.
Yeah.
I try to go down at least once or twice a year just to visit and check things out.
Yeah, if I didn't have some of the stuff that was going on with my oldest daughter, she got sick, I might not have come back. I mean, obviously come back to visit and to my kids would come down there and stuff, but I really saw myself living there, and who knows? I mean, that could be, I could go back.
Maybe it's in your future.
Yeah.
But it shows you. Doesn't that show you how important your family is? Like no matter
absolutely.
No matter where you are, what the thing is, or what the flashy thing is in front of you at any given time, it's like your family is what really or at least that's what motivates me.
Yeah, for sure, man. So you would always come on. We touched on this earlier, and try to point people in the right direction if they had legal questions. And what I would love to do is have you back on and give people a chance to write in. And you could do that. You can email me at any time, jeremy@loper@gmail.com, or hit me up on any of my social media. And if you have any legal questions for Steve that you might not want to get out because, picking up the phone to call a lawyer is intimidating to people. And I would love to do a segment here on the show.
It would be a blast. I mean, and we can do it, right? We could do it. They can email you questions. We could even talk about doing something live. We could take different questions
or send us like a video message. That would work too. Even better, yeah. And I would love to do that. So let's work on that, guys. If you guys have anything, you can even leave them in the comment section below. And I would love to have Steve back on, and we could do this again, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it.
Dude, I'm so glad you came in today.